What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today talking about my Week 6 NFL Power Rankings. We're going to go team by team and talk about who's moving up, who's moving down, and who's staying put. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. Who should be ranked higher? Who should be lower? Who's your favorite squad? And where do you think they should fit in to these power rankings? Quick programming note, just so you know, next week I will be in Italy for my best friend's wedding, so we will not have power rankings for Week 7, but then Week 8 we will have some updated power rankings. So going to basically take a week off, but looking forward to that trip. Hopefully you guys understand. Cool. I'm going to also be working pretty quick here just because I have a couple other things I need to get done and shot before I leave for Italy. But we get back to the Carolina Panthers at Team 32. No real surprise there. I think, especially after seeing Chicago on Thursday night, I think Carolina's the worst team in the NFL. Still a lot of time for that to be turned around this year. Still a lot of time for growth for Bryce Young, but he's struggling. Adam Thielen's productive, but it's not in a way that super translates to the field. It's more so for fantasy. And that defense, especially without J.C. Horn, just isn't special enough to kind of carry the weight. So Carolina stays at 32. I got the Cardinals down one spot. Apologies, that says 7. It should only just be down one spot. I only moved them up to 30. Look, Jamar Chase and the Bengals got the best of them. It's going to happen. But it was that game was more about Cincy getting back on track than Arizona, came crashing down to reality. I still think the Cardinals are a better team than we all expected before the season. Just when Burrow and Chase are clicking, it's hard to keep up with them, especially if you don't have a Super Bowl competitive roster. So Cardinals down one spot. Sorry about the typo there. Broncos are down 3 more. This defense is just still rough. A lot of things to be excited about in Denver. What people thought was going to be there in Denver. I've sung the song many times. It's just not there on the field. So, and now you're getting reports that they're going to blow it up, that Sean Payton may go on a fire sale. So I don't doubt that. They've already moved on from Randy Gregory. Don't doubt that some of those wide receivers are shipped in the offseason. I'm interested to see what else they might do at the deadline too. I could see if this team keeps going where they're going, just true fire sale at the deadline, and ultimately set themselves up to build the team in Sean Payton's image. And ultimately, I think that means George Payton's probably gone at the end of this season, their GM too. So sucks for him, sucks for a lot of the guys there. But this team's just not winning football games, so I do think a blow up is in the imminent future. Then we get to the Giants, another bad team. There's not a whole lot I can say here that I haven't said before. The offense just isn't cutting it, especially with no Andrew Thomas. That offensive line is not good. Big time concern for Evan Neal. Not far behind is Kayvon Thibodeau. And I like Wink Martindale as a coordinator, but there's not a whole lot of, I don't know if that's the exact defense that, he needs to be able to run his scheme. So, the Giants just aren't great. Sorry, I wish I could say something else, but it's a lot of the same stuff we've been saying all year long. Commanders down 2 more spots. Really frustrating game on Thursday. Felt like that was one where their offense should have looked better than it did. Maybe it's the Matt Eberflus change with him taking over as the DC and the defensive play caller more specifically. That kind of stymied Washington. But I also think Ron Rivera's just got to go. I think Jack Del Rio's got to go. Their DC. How many years now we've talked about the Commanders on paper having a great defense, and then you see them on the field and they're kind of underwhelming. And nobody wanted to cover DJ Moore. He was the only Bears wide receiver with fantasy points, and that just shows how inept that the coverage was, the tackling was. It was just a rough night all the way across the board for Commanders fans. Sorry about that. You're down 2 spots. Bears move up 4 places. I still think they were one of the worst teams in the league, but it was good to see that offense move the ball well. Again, a lot of it was DJ Moore, but it was good to see them figure out DJ Moore. And Justin Fields, in his defense, was putting the ball in the money. He was giving DJ Moore every type of pass that he needed to be able to do more with it. So, good game for that offense all in all. The defense looked a whole lot better, too. So, that's something I'm monitoring the next couple of weeks, specifically this week against Minnesota. If Eberflus taking over as the DC actually had the impact that it did on that Bears defense, this is a better team than I thought, because everything before that just suggested it was just a bad defense straight up. But Eberflus had that defense looking a whole lot better. Was that Washington being inept on offense, or was that Chicago figuring it out? We'll have to wait till next week, or maybe in a couple weeks beyond that. Raiders are up a spot. Good win, but it came down to Max Crosby living in Jordan Love's face that entire Monday night game, and then getting 3 picks off Love, which he's going to be a high variance guy. There's weeks where he looks good, weeks where he pitches to the defense. Raiders took advantage of that, so it's good to see the Raiders win that game. Considering I didn't think I was going to say that at all this year, still think the offense could be playing better. Himmy G. He's just fine. He is what we thought that he would be. Kind of a quiet night for Devontae Adams, but I kind of give credit there to Green Bay for kind of taking him away and making the Raiders find another way to beat them. But really, this was a game won by the Vegas defense, which I didn't think I would say this year. Patriots are down a spot. Mac Jones isn't great. The pass catchers aren't very good. The defense down. Christian Gonzalez is obviously in a tough spot right now. I think J.C. Jackson will be able to do enough to kind of keep that secondary as is. But also down Matt Judon. I mean, this is just not the New England team that we kind of thought we might see 7 weeks ago, So they're kind of heading the wrong direction. And ultimately, if you're a Patriots fan, it might be for the best. Like, picking a quarterback in the top 10 might be the best thing to turn this franchise around. And I'm still in on Bill Belichick, but he kind of needs that like revitalized talent at the QB position to kind of resurrect the current narrative that he has right now. Falcons are up 4 spots, and really you got these slog of AFC South teams playing catch up to the Jags. It's the Colts, the Texans, the Falcons in that order. Falcons, nice solid win. It was really nice to see Desmond Ridder finally play a good game. That was easily the best game of his career. Now, when you compare that to every other game he's played, though, it's definitely the outlier. So I want to see him build upon that. Do it for a second consecutive week. Start to change my mind. But it was also good to see Kyle Pitts lead the team in targets, catches, and receiving yards. And it was good to see Drake London make some big plays. So it's just good to see those pass catches, those weapons that we talk about with Atlanta actually factor into the game. And it took a good Desmond Ridder game to get that. Hopefully that's just how things are moving forward for Atlanta. Texans are down 2 spots. Still think they're a good team. Yes, I know the Texans lost to the Falcons, but C.J. Stroud also led a game-winning drive that just basically wasn't to be just because the Falcons did the same, and Younghoe Koo is one of the best kickers in football. But ultimately, I think these two teams are really evenly fought. The game was in Atlanta. Take that into account as well. And then for the entire season, I'm a little bit more impressed with Houston than I am with Atlanta. That's why they stay out in front. Then the Colts up a spot. I mean, they're finding ways to win games with Gardner Minshew, who's like QB 35 in the league, QB 34. Like, he's a good backup. And I'm interested to see how he plays against the Jags this week. But I think this is a better team than I thought they'd be. I think their roster is more well-rounded. I love what Shane Steichen's doing from not only an offensive standpoint, but just having his guys look more together. I mean, this team just looks more coherent, more cohesive than they did last season. So I think, the kind of change of head coaching position sometimes spurs that. And again, I like what he's doing on offense, and he's having to do it with 2 different quarterbacks. So I think this team's a little bit more fun, probably a little bit better, more dynamic with Anthony Richardson, but Gardner Minshew's good enough to keep him right here in the low 20s to into the high teens. Steelers are up a spot. It's another week where the Steelers defense wills them to a win. There really was no reason that the Steelers won this game. It took, the 7-8 drops that it was for Baltimore's pass catchers, and 6 of them or something like that were first downs or touchdowns. I mean, that's as good luck you're going to get against a team that should have, dogged you to be outright. And it was just one of those games where, like, if you stopped watching after the first quarter when it was 10-0 Baltimore and then tuned in for the final results, you were shocked. You didn't know how that happened. But, as a Steelers fan, I'll take it. Eventually the defense makes a couple plays. Joey Porter Jr. playing pretty well. Need to get him some more snaps. And then ultimately, Pickens breaks away from Marlon Humphrey. And, it's what I want to see out of this offense. I want to see more Pickett to Pickens. I do think it's interesting. Got to bring in a Matt Canada point here. He's the only guy not to celebrate in the press box after that touchdown. A little weird. I wonder if that was an audible at the line. I wonder if that was just Pickett saying, hey, I'm going to trust my guy and going against Canada. I'd love to know more of the tea about that. But it's still an inept offense, and it kind of took some improvisation to get that final blow against Baltimore. Buccaneers run by, so they're going to stay put. Rams lost, but still competitive loss against the Philadelphia Eagles. I feel like that game was even closer than the actual score was. Get Cooper Kupp back, too, so where they lose the game, they get a better offense, which I didn't account for last week because it hadn't happened yet. So I'm going to keep them at 19. I still think this is a pretty good team. I think they're around the playoff mark. Honestly, I would move them up ahead of Green Bay, but I'm not going to move you up if you lost. And that takes us to the Packers at 18. They did lose. Jordan Love, 3 picks. We already talked about this game. Ultimately, it was his decision-making and those interceptions that came back to roost. Because I think the Packers defense ultimately played a pretty good game. I know A.J. Dillon isn't super special, but he did enough to kind of keep the chains moving. He's like the king of 2 to 5 yard runs. This man is just, that's his sweet spot. But also, want a little bit more out of that offense in regards to those pass catchers, especially against the Raiders defense. I thought was susceptible. Max Crosby had a big game, so still trying to figure out that other tackle spot. Josh Nijman didn't have the best game, so it feels like the Packers are close to being there, but just not quite there. Titans are down a spot. They lost to the Colts. I still got them ahead of Indianapolis just because, again, I'm generally impressed with what they've done this season, but I wouldn't be surprised. They're kind of a team that feels like they're going to live in this third column for the majority of the season. I still like the run defense, but it feels like that secondary is prone to be beaten over the top. And that offense, when it's on, cool. When it's not, it's rough. And I just think ultimately the Colts might be the better side, and that's kind of what the results showed. But you got to take into context where these two teams were to start the season and then their directions that they've gone in since then. And I do think it's only a matter of time before maybe the Titans are behind Indianapolis or behind Houston. Ultimately, I'm not even entirely sure they're the second best team in the AFC South. Apologies, earlier I misspoke. I said the Falcons were in that AFC South slog. They're NFC South. So apologies for getting my divisions mixed up, conferences. Then we get to the Vikings down 2 spots. Yeah, honestly, you could argue they should be down further. I just think there's still good talent there. Justin Jefferson being out for at least the next 4 weeks hinders that for sure. Yeah, I mean, they're going toe to toe with Kansas City. I don't want to hold that type of a loss against them. Like, losing to the Chiefs is something that a lot of teams are going to do this year. But yeah, it's just not a great team. But I think middle of the pack is still about right, given the talent I think is there in Minneapolis. Then we get the Saints moving up 3 spots. Again, this feels like a team that's going to live in this 15 to 18 range. Good enough defense. Derek Carr played a really good game, one of the best games he's had as a Saint. I also think that was kind of like New England meltdown week, and maybe it's emblematic of the season they're about to have down the stretch. So I feel like they caught the Patriots in the worst game they might play this season, and the Saints kind of played one of their best. So it's just 2 teams heading in different directions, and I will reward them moving up 3 spots, not buying to them as like a serious deep Super Bowl run type of contender. The Jets are up a spot. Good win against Denver. Zach Wilson played well. It wasn't as good as he looked against Kansas City, but generally still well. Defense is doing its thing. So it was just kind of the Jets game we thought. We talked about on the hurry up offense last week. We all liked the Jets. Multiple of us took Jets money line, which happy to see that cash. I think they were the better team. But again, 2 teams kind of heading in different directions. The Broncos aren't very good, headed towards a fire sale. Jets are looking to keep their season alive before Rodgers comes back. So it's just 2 teams with 2 different motives in a lot of ways. Bengals, Browns, Lions, Chargers, all staying put. The easy one to get through here are the Browns and the Chargers. They were on bye, so they're not going to move. Bengals, the reason they're not moving up is, one, because 2 teams ahead of them were on bye. Even the Seahawks you see are down a spot. They were on a bye. I hate that I had to move them down, but sometimes you just get that little bit of bad luck. Lions won, and yeah, the Bengals looked really good. Defense looked solid. It was good. It was good to see them look like the Bengals that we thought they'd be. I just need to see it for a second straight week because we bought into it after that Monday night win against the Rams. The next week they lay an egg, so I just need to see it a second consecutive week, and this team will shoot up the board. But it did feel like Joe Burrow was back, at least closer to 100%, and it was great to see Jamar Chase. It's kind of a squeaky wheel game. Receiver complains about not getting the ball. He gets the ball a ton, 3 touchdowns. Like he has the big game that you were kind of looking for. So, and Lou Anarumo, that defense looked a whole lot better. But again, against an offense that's not world beater. So, nice step in the right direction. They look like the Cincinnati Bengals. Make it 2 weeks in a row, you'll move up in these rankings. Again, Browns were on a bye. Lions, good win against the Panthers, but Carolina's team 32 in these power rankings, so it's hard to move them up even more, especially, again, considering the 2 teams in front of them were on bye, and I'm pretty firm in my top 8. Chargers on bye, still like them a good bit. Tough game on Monday, up ahead against Dallas. Seahawks, also a good team. And they got the Bengals this week, so we're going to get to see what these teams number 9, team number 10 are all about. Into the top 8, I moved the Jags to the top 8. You beat the Bills. They were in the top 4. I got to give you kudos there. So that's why Seattle, despite being on a bye, is going to move down a place. Still don't think the Jags played a great game, but it was good to see ETN break off that big run. Good to see that explosive element in the offense. You get Cam Robinson back. He plays pretty well. And, it's kind of more of the same. Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram over the middle of the field, dashes of Calvin Ridley. I want to see this team push the ball deep down the field more, but what they're doing right now is working. And I still don't think that defense is 100% there, but they're doing enough to win games. And I think a lot of that's Doug Peterson. And I just want to see what that does over the course of the season. It's also a team that plays really well in London, so take that into account, for whatever it may be worth. But yeah, I want to see this team in its biggest game of the season at home or on the road, like in the U.S. I want to see how they play that type of matchup because I still feel like we haven't seen the best of the Jags yet. Ravens, Cowboys, Bills all down a spot. Ravens lose to the Steelers. Again, I think that was a total fluke. And that's just coming from a Steelers fan. I think that game was a total fluke of a loss for the Ravens. Lamar played awesome, had like a 93-plus passing grade using PFF's numbers if you're into that stuff. And like I said, there was like 7-8 drops, 5 or 6 of them for first downs or touchdowns. I mean, it's just an absolutely pathetic performance from those pass catchers, and it shouldn't happen given the investment they put in that position. So I think it's an outlier performance. I think the Ravens are just fine. Cowboys, also down a spot. I don't know what it is, but man, the 49ers are just, if it hasn't been changed in the Wikipedia, man, the 49ers are Dallas Cowboys' dad. They just have their number. And I think a lot of that is Dak. Like, I almost wonder how much of the mental impact the 49ers bring to him ultimately leads to his bad games. Because I'd love to know what his, single team performances. What does Dak's numbers look like against San Francisco? Because it feels like he's the guy that can't get over the hump, and in turn, Dallas can't get over the hump. But yeah, ultimately, I think this team's going to be just fine. I'm picking them to win against the Chargers on Monday just because Mike McCarthy doesn't typically have 2 bad games back-to-back. Look at the Cowboys last year. Some of their worst games, some of their losses were immediately answered by some of their best games of the season. So I'm kind of predicting the same thing will happen on Monday night. So I'm not panicking about the Cowboys. They lose to the Chargers, and it's a really ugly performance from Dak again. Maybe we'll have a different conversation. Bills lose to the Jags. I still think Buffalo's the better team. Josh Allen played well, but no Greg Rousseau. It was good to see Epineza make some good plays. They're still kind of figuring out that edge position, but also this is a team that just progressively is getting less healthy on that side of the ball. They're going to get Von Miller back, and like I said, Greg Rousseau was out, but that's not a long-term injury. But Matt Milano, that's a huge injury. That's a huge injury. He's one of their top 5 best players and most valuable players. And I say that as someone who does not value linebacker as a super valuable position on the field. But he is one of their top 5 most valuable players. So that loss is huge. And then Tre'Davious White, of course, we didn't talk about that last week in the power rankings because we didn't know the official, injury and its extent, and if it wasn't entirely going to be the season that it is. So yeah, a couple of big losses, then that side of the ball is really starting to get depleted for the Bills. I'm interested to see how they handle that moving forward. I know the Bills beat the Dolphins earlier this season, but a couple more big injuries for Buffalo. Miami looks like they're back on track. Honestly, Tua pitched the ball to the Giants a couple times and put the ball in harm's way, and it didn't matter. They're just that much better than the Giants. So Miami's got one of the best offenses that I've ever seen, and that defense looked better. Granted, against a very bad Giants offense, but it was good to see them finally look competent on that side of the ball, right? So it was a good step in the right direction for that side of the ball. I got them back in the top 4. Chiefs, Eagles, 49ers all staying put. Kansas City is still one of the best teams in the league. Mahomes is, a wizard, and he kind of needed to be one to stave off the Vikings game. That was, one-score game. That's a Minnesota specialty, and, Mahomes makes big plays where it matters, and that's the difference between Pat Mahomes and Kirk Cousins. Eagles, good win on the road. You can never be disappointed at that. Still don't feel like they played like 100% great game, but they're putting together a lot of pretty good performances. And you know what? If you play 17 games this year in the regular season, and they're all pretty good, there are a lot of coaches who are like, that's fine. As long as you avoid the duds, we'll take pretty good week in and week out. We'll keep getting better, and then we'll get in the postseason to play our brand of football. And it kind of feels like if you're an Eagles fan, you're content with what you've seen so far. And then the 49ers, look, Brock Purdy may not be, Tom Brady, but he's the best guy that Shanahan's had running that offense in San Francisco. And I'm not afraid to say it. Like, the numbers back that up. He's running that offense better than anybody else. That's not to say he's the best quarterback in the league. And do I think he should be the MVP? His numbers would say he should be in that conversation. I don't know if he is specifically. But the numbers are there, and the supporting cast is crazy this week. It's George Kittle getting to the end zone 3 times. I mean, it feels like they can just spin. They can play Wheel of Fortune, get a spin, a roll of the wheel, and then whoever's name comes out on top is going to be the big play guy. He's going to be the guy who gets to the end zone a couple times. So, I mean, it's just a loaded offense. One of the best defenses in football, and Brock Purdy running that offense better than we've seen anybody do it in San Francisco while Kyle Shanahan's been there. All that to say, yeah, I got San Francisco's number 1 team in the NFL right now. But, guys, let me hear your list down below in the comments section. Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Who's your favorite squad? Where would you put them in these power rankings? Love to hear your thoughts down below. Like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new and want more football content like this in your life. But until next time, my name is Teach, and we are signing off.